Welcome to episode 65 of the Cover 2 presented by Tigervision. We got some new graphics right here.
Woo!
Zach made those.
Look at that.
Yeah, that's pretty
Look
sweet,
at that.
isn't it? That was fantastic.
That was so smooth.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
my goodness.
So as you can see, I'm Patrick Neal. This is Grayson Mann.
If it wasn't clear already after 2 years, there we go.
Yeah. If you haven't known our names by now, might be an issue. But now we've got extra.
We got some reinforcements,
Yeah,
and
we've got
they're
extra stuff to
so
let you know.
clean.
But Grayson, it's week. What was it? It was week 9.
Yes, week
of the
9.
NFL. There were some fantastic games. There were some blowouts. There were some close games. There was pretty much everything.
Let's just talk about the weekend that took place on this day in history. Historians will look back at week 9, and they'll remember the day that the C.J. Stroud coming out party. They'll remember that OG Fortnite was back that weekend.
Yep.
Let's just say it's so back.
I've gotten a win already.
I have too.
Let's go.
Let's go. That's another fist bump. That's another fist bump.
Fantastic.
But they will remember this weekend in history. There are some banger NFL games. One of them are in my studs category as a whole game. But we'll get into all that. Patrick, how are you doing, sir?
I'm good. Let's go ahead. You mentioned you had one game that was in your studs category. Let's go ahead and get to it.
Yeah, so I had the Cowboys-Eagles in like just a whole studs category. What a fun game that is. And usually with the Cowboys in big games, you're thinking, okay, how are they going to find a way to... And they did find a way to lose this one, but usually it's in more of an ugly fashion. Just because I always view Dallas as a team that they're in that B category where they're not a Super Bowl contender, but they're good enough to beat anyone, just as long as it's not in the playoffs. And so I felt this game was a really good measuring stick. Philly tried to collapse near at the end. It had all the drama, all the ingredients for that lone 4 o'clock window, because we've reached that point in the NFL season where all the 4 o'clock games are really bad and we don't have enough. So this was a really nice treat after a really great 1 o'clock window.
Yeah, it was a really, really good game, really close the entire time. But like you mentioned, Dallas came up just a little bit short. There were a few times where they quite literally came up physically a little bit short. They had Luke Schoonmaker, I think, was the tight end?
He was probably like maybe like a millimeter.
Yeah, I mean, his body was in the end zone, but the ball was not when he was down, so it didn't count. Dak Prescott, he decided to step out of bounds on his way to the end zone. He also, I saw a meme somewhere where it looked like, he tried to leap for the end zone, ended up on his head. It looked like he was in Stomp the Yard, which is a fun throwback movie, little dance battle. But I think it was a great game. Unfortunately, late game, I don't know if I want to say decision making, but decision making to not stay in bounds or get over the end line hurt the Cowboys.
Yeah, and also Philly collapsing down the stretch. I think they had 3 or 4 straight penalties. There were 2 15-yard ones. Jordan Davis also an offsides penalty that almost made the difference, I think, in terms of where they were at yardage-wise, because CeeDee Lamb was quite literally a yard short from scoring the game-winning touchdown on his career day of 11 catches and 191 yards. But for me, my takeaway was from this game was I think there's a formula to beat Philadelphia. And if you can block this defensive line that's really talented, their secondary and their linebacking core, it's not as strong as it was last year, despite the fact that they added Kevin Byard, which may change because he just literally got added over the trade deadline, as we covered last week. So it may take some time, but I think for the Philadelphia Eagles, there is potentially a formula that teams could expose in the NFC playoffs, if not the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and that's a lot easier said than done, blocking the Philadelphia Eagles defensive line because they have so many dudes. But yeah, James Bradbury, I think, was injured this game. I think Darius Slay came out for a little bit. So they're both a year older now. Kevin Byard is not the youngest guy either. So yeah, the secondary is probably not as good as it was last year, but this defense is still really, really solid. Jalen Hurts is playing very well. He's playing at an MVP level.
Once again.
DeAndre Swift has been a really good addition for him. And yeah, A.J. Brown is probably an all-pro receiver this year.
Absolutely. At least right now, they're the best team in the NFC. There's not really, until we see what San Francisco figures out in this future stretch. Maybe Seattle got pegged down a little bit with the Baltimore Ravens loss. And then obviously Dallas still is not able to find a way to beat them. So currently in this NFC stretch, it's maybe Detroit and Philadelphia, but Philadelphia still feels like the class of this conference.
I think right now, we talked about before the 49ers went on their losing streak, how they were kind of heading above everybody else, but it's kind of flip-flop with the Eagles. Now I think it's kind of, Philly's probably, top dog right now. Then it's probably the 49ers and Cowboys. You could probably put the Lions in there as well, but the Cowboys also match up better, I think, with the Eagles than with the 49ers, obviously. They were kind of blown out by San Francisco, and we're a lot closer with Philadelphia. So, right now the Eagles look like the top team, but it's not like they don't look as dominant as they did last year.
Right, I think that's probably to be expected just because they probably caught a lot of teams off guard in 2022 on their way to the Super Bowl. So this year everyone's eyes are on them. They are the team to beat, so everyone's going to get their best shot. But still 8-1 through 9 games, especially where I think the team with the most wins at the NFC is 6. So you got a little bit of comfort in terms of finding that was my ring.
Yeah, there you go.
Finding a home field advantage, which in Philadelphia it is tough to beat that home crowd and that energy.
Yep. How about we transition to another game? English is difficult. The Ravens, they take care of business, 37-3 against the Seahawks.
Man.
It was not close. I didn't get to watch too much of this game. I don't know if you have any thoughts on it, but from what I have looked at, what I have observed, the Ravens have just continued their dominance that they have for much of this season. Lamar Jackson is playing very, very well, and they don't even need him to do a lot. Like in this game, you had Keaton Mitchell go crazy. The running game in general just was very, very good. The defense was fantastic. Holding the Seahawks to 3 points. It's difficult to hold any NFL team to 3 points, but the Seahawks are a solid team. You mentioned probably in that C tier of the NFC. The middle to bottom of the playoff picture.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be a road playoff team in this wild card picture when things are all said and done. What really impressed me with this Ravens team this week, I know they put up 37 points, but their pass rush was malicious on Sunday. Geno Smith in this offense had no time to get things going. And this is a Seahawks team that's really found success through the air. So it was really like the perfect storm of a matchup where you made a guy like Geno Smith who I think it still takes some time for me to get used to because I've always seen Geno as the Jets quarterback that never really figured it out. But he's really had a career renaissance with the Seahawks. So to see that offense kind of stall and stagnate on the road may not be encouraging for Seahawks fans, but if you're a Baltimore Ravens fan, currently sitting at the top of the AFC, got to feel pretty good because that defense definitely can travel.
Yeah, I mean, you have Jadeveon Clowney, who wears number 24, by the way. I absolutely hate it. But look, it's Jadeveon Clowney, and he's playing very, very well. A lot of the other players on that defensive line, Odafe Owe.
Yeah.
You have, Geno Stone as one of the safeties. You got Marlon Humphrey, who's been a fantastic corner for him this season. I'm trying to find the exact quote, but as I look this up, basically, the Ravens' defense this season has been basically about as good as the 2000s Ravens defense.
Yeah, that
the one with
elite defense with Ray Lewis,
Terrell Suggs, all those guys. It's just been fantastic for him, and I can't quite find it. But regardless, this Ravens defense has been fantastic. Their defensive coordinator, Mike McDonald, I want to say is his name. Yes, Mike McDonald. He is most likely going to get a head coaching job, I think, or at least be a candidate for many of the open positions this coming offseason. But yeah, this Ravens defense.
Yeah, they've also entered all 9 games leading the fourth quarter, which is tied for the 5th longest streak to begin a Super Bowl era, or begin a season in the Super Bowl era, and that started in 1966.
There you go.
So I'm just really impressed with this team. I think that this is a team that when you have a defense like this that can travel, it doesn't matter if they're on the road or they're at home. You might have to go to Kansas City. You might have to go to Jacksonville. You might have to go to potentially Cincinnati as they're starting to ramp things up. So, You need a defense like that can win games that are 20-17 when the offense isn't going to be as high flying as it was today.
Yeah.
So they have all the ingredients if Lamar can stay healthy.
Yeah, and they may not even have to travel. They may have home field advantage the way they're playing right now. But what's another game you want to cover? What's a stud or a dud you want to talk about?
Let's get a dud out the way just for before we talk. Probably, I think we all have number 7 of the Texans on our mind for later. But I'm going to circle a dud to reading the room. It's Robert Saleh's post-game press conference on Monday night where he was like, guys, it could be much worse. And I was like, how does it get much worse than this? Now, I looked at Zach Wilson's stats, and they weren't terrible. No touchdowns, no picks. So it's like, okay. But they also fumbled the ball 3 times, and they outgained the Chargers, which for the Jets offense, that probably won't happen much.
Yeah.
And so I know that this Jets team, all they really have to do is stay afloat before Aaron Rodgers comes back, but I've seen Aaron Rodgers rush an injury, and it didn't look pretty in that Packers season. I think it was might have been 2017, where the Packers were 4-6, 4-7, and they had a chance to make the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers came back from a collarbone injury, and it just didn't look great. And so with him being older, I just hope that he's not risking long-term.
Well, yeah, I mean, you say that, but, to be honest, how many more years does Aaron Rodgers have left in the league? So maybe at this point, I'm sure you saw the quote, but Robert Saleh was asked today about, why has he not looked at Trevor Siemian starting? And, why is Zach Wilson still the starter of this team? And he goes, I plead the fifth. Basically, you got me there. I don't know what I'm doing, but
it's a checkmate.
I think basically the way they have handled this situation and not tried another quarterback, when it is very obvious that Zach Wilson is not the guy in New York, it makes me think that Aaron Rodgers has got to be coming back at some point this season.
I could see it being maybe close to after Thanksgiving is what it could be lining up to be, is because he's starting to make progress that I've never seen. And now let's say he comes back and he makes everyone including me, who's worried about potentially him re-injuring it or something worse happening, and he goes and throws for an unreal stat line post-Achilles injury, and they make the playoffs. I mean, that's a storyline right there for the Jets. And maybe they don't want to change things up, and they just want to keep the status quo because they have a good enough defense to win most of their games. But I think you have to maybe try to change it up to find something to provide a little bit of cushion for this team moving forward.
Yeah, because this defense is fantastic, and you can't just keep wasting away seasons of a fantastic defense.
These are decisions that get you fired, too.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like there's just been a lot of indecision with the coaching staff, with the general manager, with Robert Saleh as well. And, yeah, it just convinces me more that, there's a theory that Aaron Rodgers never actually tore his Achilles. Maybe it's just a strain or something. And so he comes back towards the end of the season, gets everybody extra fired up. Somehow they make the playoffs and then go on a run, which would be pretty cool, I guess, especially if you're a Jets fan. But yeah, I'm so confused why you wouldn't have brought in, Josh Dobbs, who literally won a game in Minnesota without knowing a single player on the Vikings' name.
And we'll get to him.
He didn't know the snap count either. He was very easily available. There's Jacoby Brissett. There's Andy Dalton.
Carson Wentz was available until today.
Maybe you don't want Carson Wentz. But regardless, there were a lot of options available that, for the foreseeable future, you can probably hang with and get some better production than what you have with Zach.
And there are quarterbacks within the division that they probably could have poked. I know Case Keenum's in the Texans, but Mike White on the Jets. Maybe try to trade back for him. Maybe try to pawn off Mac Jones as just a slightly better option than Zach Wilson. And so maybe division rivals don't want to do that with each other, but with the way that the Patriots currently were, or still are, might have been able to get some value out of that for a couple games. So there were options. They didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And so, speaking of having options, doing nothing with them, the Falcons are 4-5.
Nice segue.
And so I just want to throw this in when you mentioned Josh Dobbs. I think, but if it wasn't for C.J. Stroud performing like the MVP of the league, I think we'd be talking about having Josh Dobbs having the best quarterback performance this year. because I think with all the stuff that's laid out for you, and there's more detail that probably we don't even know about the type of work and it probably just shows how smart Josh Dobbs is just as an individual. I mean,
astronaut.
Yeah, he's the astronaut. But I think he probably, let's map this out on the timeline here. The trade deadline was Tuesday, and that announcement for him going to the Cardinals, I think we said it on the show, so it had to have happened Tuesday afternoon. Trade gets processed, probably goes on the plane Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, and maybe they practice for 2 days before they head down to Atlanta. I mean, I saw on the sideline, he was practicing the cadence with the offensive line. Like, the guy came in with literally, it was like if you go into a test with studying nothing and you wing it and you get 100. That's what Josh Dobbs did on Sunday.
And everybody, I saw a video of them in the locker room after where Kevin O'Connell and the entire team just kind of embraced him when he walked into the locker room after doing, media or whatever he may have been doing. It's just fantastic vibes in Minnesota after a really, really bad start. Mm-hmm. And then you also have the Kirk Cousins news. You have Justin Jefferson goes on IR. Cam Akers, unfortunately, also tore his had his second Achilles tear within like a year or so, 2 years, which is unfortunate. But he came back very quickly, so maybe he'll come back again. But yeah, it's just great vibes in Minnesota. They beat the Falcons, who have kind of been trending in the opposite direction. Yeah,
and you look at this Falcons team, I think we pretty much felt like this was a talented enough roster to make that next step, regardless of whether it was Desmond Ridder or Taylor Heineke at quarterback. And it just seems like this offense, and including people that I know that are Falcons fans, are extremely frustrated with the usage of their stars, like Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts, where, yeah, Jonnu Smith may take a 61-yard screen for a touchdown, but where's the use of Kyle Pitts' huge frame or Bijan Robinson's unreal athleticism in certain situations? I don't know if they're trying to be too smart and save him like a load management strategy for a late push, or it's just this lack of, I don't know. I don't know what the reasoning is behind that.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm not the smartest guy. I'm not, some sort of football guru or anything. I'm not an NFL head coach, but I'd try and get the ball to my best players as much as possible.
It does make sense.
And yeah, that's been the Falcons' thing for, a year and a half, 2 years at this point, where, it's more than just like the fantasy manager saying, oh, why isn't Drake London getting any targets? Why isn't Kyle Pitts getting any targets? Why isn't Bijan getting any end zone rushes? But, I don't know why, there's a preference to use Jonnu Smith, Mac Hollins, and Tyler Algier. Tyler Algier's, they're all fine options, but when you have Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Bijan Robinson, I just don't really understand why you don't use them a little bit more. But
yeah, it almost feels like you're trying to outsmart yourself. And I think we have that in every league, really, where you have that coach that has all the talent on the floor, but it's like, oh, they're going to have all their attention directed on them. Let's use our other pieces. They won't see it coming. It seems like a natural step, or like they're zigging, you're zagging type thing. But I think in some cases, you just have to trust your guys to win those matchups. And Kyle Pitts was drafted in the top 5, Bijan Robinson in the top 10. You got to use the picks that you've invested so much in and had these losing seasons for. It feels like almost a waste of a pick in a sense.
Yeah, it's like, the Usher gif where he's like, watch this?
Yeah.
It's like Arthur Smith is like, you think I'm going to use Bijan and Drake London and Kyle Pitts? Watch this. And then it's a Jonnu Smith screen. But regardless, I just want to see, for my own sake, I want to see Bijan and all them get more touches, because Bijan Robinson, especially Toy Story version, was fantastic at the start of this year. He's kind of slowed down a little bit, but
and he's still averaging 5 yards a carry or over that. So he's still pretty good. It's not like there's a lack of usage because he isn't playing well. When he gets the ball, the good things happen. Same thing with Kyle Pitts.
Exactly.
So not saying Kyle Pitts needs 15 catches, and maybe there's like a stat of usage rate or target rate, but it just doesn't feel like on the field it's translating.
Yeah.
So here's my question to you. I had some overarching questions I would love to see answered.
Okay.
First one is, if the Falcons continue this losing skid, could Arthur Smith be in danger of losing his job?
Ooh. You know, I think. I mean, I guess he could be right. I guess it would depend on how many, like, what their final record is. You know, because this division is up for grabs, and it's not like they're out of it by any means. I think they were in the lead just last week before this loss.
This division will probably be an 8-9 win team.
Yeah, so, you know, I guess you kind of got to see what happens, you know, the second half of the season, whether they continue with Ritter or Heineke. It looks like they're going with Heineke for now, but not too sure how much more he gives you than Ritter at this point. So yeah, I guess it'd be an option. I don't know if it's going to happen. I mean, I picked Arthur Smith to be Coach of the Year, so I'm hoping that doesn't happen.
He's gonna have to get rolling here pretty soon.
Yeah, pretty soon. But I don't see it happening. But I guess it's possible.
Anything is possible in the NFL. Yeah. So we're seeing some of that right now. But Patrick, I know it's both on our minds right now, so let's just talk about it. Let's talk about C.J. Stroud. Wow. I think you and I are both probably pretty high on Stroud as a talent heading into this year, but I think the spot that he was projected to land at gave us a little pause, understandably, because this Texans team was a nightmare for the last couple of years, flipping through head coaches. I think their offense was dead last in the league last year, virtually the same talent. They lost Brandon Cooks in the offseason, the Cowboys, in a trade. So you have all those ingredients. So you think, okay, this team's probably going to win 3 or 4 games. Stroud will probably show flashes, and we'll see what happens in year 2. But man,
they've expedited the process.
They have.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you mentioned, C.J. Stroud, I think we were, you know, I thought he had a very good floor as a rookie QB. I didn't think he was going to be the worst of them all, but I didn't necessarily think he was going to be the best, potentially. However, his arm talent has completely just shown up. His poise has shown up. And he has been NFL ready since week 1, basically. He's got fantastic touch. You know, he can fit the ball in virtually any window. And these receivers, this offensive line, the coaching staff, you know, with Bobby Slowick as the OC, and the defense have all stepped up. So, yeah, Houston looked like, you know, to be in not the best of situations. You know, when you look at that receiving core and you see Nico Collins, Noah Brown, Tank Dell, and you're like, okay, that's fine, I guess. I mean, honestly, not like before the season, you're like, ew, that's kind of gross. But they've all stepped up, and they have been fantastic.
They really have. And I think what most impressed me about C.J. Stroud was, I think he had 46 seconds, no timeouts, but also let's take the game-winning drive for what it was, and just some really great throws, had to get a touchdown there. But I think the situations where, because Houston lost their kicker in this game, and they had the running back kick a field goal. So there were separate 4th down situations that they didn't have a choice of whether to go for it or not. They had to. And they couldn't just take the easy 3 in certain situations. So he had to really find the spots where the defense wasn't really giving it to him. And so overall, I think a lot of other quarterbacks, not just rookies in that situation, probably would have folded and had been like, oh, well, everything seemed to have gone against him that day. But he overcame each obstacle throughout that game. And so the biggest worry I had, he's doing that on a weekly basis and succeeding. I mean, a 14 touchdown, 1 interception on the year. This may be crazy, but I think he's an MVP candidate.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, he's definitely, because Puka Nacua has slowed down a little bit, he's probably Offensive Rookie of the Year. Mm-hmm. I think, you know, maybe he can finish like top 10 in MVP voting. If the Texans get to the playoffs and win like 10 games, I could potentially see it. I feel like, you know, someone like Lamar or Tyreek Hill might win it over him.
Someone more established will probably end up winning it.
But he definitely, at least right now, deserves to win some award. Did you see the video? Jalen Petrie, the safety for the Texans, you know, he was talking to the media after the game, and he was asked about, you know, to basically describe C.J. Stroud. And he goes, yeah, so have this thing where called like a veggie meter, where it figures out how many vegetables are in your system, in your bloodstream. And he goes, and they found all ice in C.J. Stroud's because he's got so much ice in his veins.
That's so funny.
But yeah, basically that's a good way to describe C.J. Stroud. Is he's calm, he's cool, he's collected. His emotions don't vary too much, and he's played fantastically.
They have that picture of him doing this, and it's after, I think it was probably his third or fourth touchdown, and the NFL media was freaking out about it. And I was like, man, this is just like a fun team, and it's a team I could see this offseason that they could probably go 6-11, 7-10, maybe because their schedule's going to get harder. They play a team like Cincinnati next week that's really starting to figure it out. So maybe they don't necessarily make the playoffs, but I could see them being a team that's a free agent destination.
Oh yeah.
Simply because people are like, I want to play with.
Yeah, I want to play with C.J. Stroud.
Yeah.
The vibes have just changed so dramatically, so quickly. And yeah, next year I think a lot of people are going to be talking about him as like a sleeper, maybe AFC, win a playoff game, or AFC title game contender, depending on how they do in free agency in the draft.
Maybe not go to like the Super Bowl, but kind of the turnaround that Cincinnati had, where they knew they had their guy. It was just a matter of, Joe Burrow got hurt, but there was plenty of flashes throughout his rookie year that, okay, this is the guy for Cincinnati. Then they made some right draft picks. They got a guy like Jamar Chase that only upgraded the team. So maybe Houston makes another gamble in the draft this year and tries to pair up C.J. Stroud with his old receiver in Marvin Harrison. Maybe this is the front office has clearly shown us when they drafted C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson in 2022, they're willing to take big swings to get the pieces they need. So we could potentially see something like that again. But I know we're projecting very far, but it's an exciting thing as an NFL fan.
It's an exciting time to be a Houston Texans fan. But is there anything else you want to talk about before we kind of wrap up here?
I would beat a dead horse and say the Patriots stink, but I think we've done that plenty on this show.
We have done that probably the most. That's probably been the most talked about subject area on the Cover 2.
If I can find it to not be cringeworthy or offensive, I will find a way to learn how to say the Patriots are trash in German, because they're going to be in Germany this Sunday. So if I can figure out a way to make that sound like I'm not trying to be like offensive, I will say it on the show next week.
It's going to be Veterans Day.
Yes.
As an American, I don't want the Patriots to lose in Germany.
Oh, I like that. I do.
That would be bad.
Because as a Patriots fan, I want them to draft Drake May, because I know they're not getting Caleb Williams, but I want them to get another quarterback.
Yeah. But that'll do it for this episode of The Cover 2, presented by Tigervision. We want to thank Connor and Zach for producing in the back as always. We want to thank you for tuning in. Subscribe to Tigervision, comment, share, all that's jazz. And yeah, we'll see you next week. Have a good one.